Hello, Chacruna audience. Here I am again, Bia Labate, Executive Director at Chacruna Institute for Psychedelic Plant Medicines. And we are in the Awakened Futures Summit in San Francisco. And I'm here with my colleague and friend, Kaelen Mendel. Not sure if I said that really. Mendel, Mendel Kaelen. I didn't say it right. Yeah. He's Dutch and he is come all the way. I think he lives in the UK, but came all the way here to talk or to lead a session. And he's a neuroscientist, and he has written about the role of music in psychedelic therapy. And he's kind of unique in what he does. There's not a lot of things like that. So let's hear from him about his research. And can you tell us a little bit about what you studied and your background?
Sure. So I started as a neuroscientist. Did a PhD at Imperial College London with Robin Card-Harris and David Nutt. And my interest, if I would really try to summarize it, is really in understanding the therapeutic mechanisms in psychedelic therapy, and then looking at how the model is currently being practiced, realizing the prominent role of music in psychedelic therapy. I thought that would be a really important aspect to focus on. So in my neuroscientific research, I focused on understanding how psychedelic drugs and music work together in the brain, and in clinical research how patients experience music and how the use of music can be optimized to enhance therapy outcomes.
Yeah, it's really interesting because music seems to be like a common thread in all sorts of contexts, from shamanic use to underground psychotherapy use to above ground clinical trials, and considering that music is almost a kind of universal thing in psychedelic experiences, it's really astonishing the lack of research and attention to this piece of the whole puzzle. So I think it's your research is very welcomed. Can you tell us, how did you do that research? I mean, do you put you test people under the effect? When you talk about the brain, what are you guys doing exactly?
We put people in an MRI scanner and give them LSD.
And then?
And then we played them some nice music. And played them different kinds of music, compared it with periods without music. And then at a really kind of basic level, you can compare the condition without music with the condition with music and see how activity and information exchange is different, comparing both. But we also did some more fancy analysis where we looked at acoustic qualities in the music, for example, the changes in tonality, rhythmic changes, timbre changes, and looked at how the brain is processing these different acoustic qualities that make music so special differently under LSD, and how that also, this is for me the most important thing, how it relates to the the emotional experience that music that people have when they listen to music, and how that emotional experience is enhanced under psychedelics, because that's where the therapeutic opportunity primarily lies in our current understanding.
But can you do that by just in the fMRI, or do you have to interview people afterward? How is it that you create this? Tell more. You create these connections and interpretations.
Yeah, it's in order to understand. First of all, understanding psychedelics is complex and a very novel field in itself. But the same can be said for music. We know more and more about how music works in the brain, or the psychology of music. But that combining both is a true challenge in itself. So what we did in this study is indeed having a multimodal approach. So not only looking at neurophysiology, but combining it with questionnaires, phenomenological interviews, and different neuroimaging modalities, and see how they converge. And then see if there's an emerging story from combining those different methods. So what I really would like to emphasize here as well is that we did a study with patients, and we interviewed them in depth about their experience of music. So this was a clinical trial where patients with severe depression were treated with psilocybin, and I designed the music playlist for the study, and we interviewed all the 20 patients about their experience of the music in depth, and then we identified certain themes.
Awesome. So, can you give us an example of like one story of a patient or one finding of your study?
Yeah. So it's interesting in that study that we found a few kind of key clusters in what a music experience is in a psychedelic state. One has to do with the sense of being carried on a journey. A lot of patients reported that the music almost gave them a sense of a transportation vehicle that guided them and directed them into all sorts of new directions and experiences. So this aspect of music carrying the individual on a journey, which is in essence a journey inside of oneself, was a really key aspect. More generally speaking, enhanced emotionality, enhanced mental imagery. Music is also related in our research with the increased likelihood to have peak experiences, which we know from research is correlated with positive treatment outcomes. But also, what I found very important in that study is that not everyone had a good experience with the music. There were at least 4 out of 20 who really had a really hard time with the music and the music selection in that study, and really trying to understand why that is, why that was the case, gave a lot of important insights. So, for example, those 4 patients that I'm referring to now all experienced a sense of rejecting the music, or wanting to reject the music, or not wanting the music to be there, or wanting the music to be different. And
Can you just say, like, if you listen to music that you don't like, that will create a bad trip for you?
could be, but I think that the more important and an interesting question is what does the individual mean with not liking the music? What is the source of this resistance or this rejection of the music? And you can reject music for different reasons. It could be that you don't like the style of the music. That's true. It could be that the music evokes really challenging memories and emotions. Or it could be that the music is completely out of sync with what you're currently experiencing, a sense of dissonance within the music and yourself. And for the second option, for example, when music is evoking challenging experiences, that may in fact be a really important part of the therapeutic process, and that invites the therapists in this case to facilitate an environment, a social environment, where the individual can relate to the challenging experience in such way that the challenge can transform into an opportunity.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'd say that in terms of the ayahuasca world that I'm familiar with, and my background in studying shamanism, ritual religion, it seems to be also a common thread to say focus on the music. Even if you don't like the music, there's something there, and you can sort of like pass through this tunnel, and maybe there's something else to learn on the other side, and maybe it's exactly in that moment that the music is rattling you up in a strange way, that you should really pay attention to what is going on, and maybe there is some chance for growth. I wanted to know, after doing this research, what did you do next? Are you still doing that, or where are you at?
So one of the key insights from this research is not only the importance of music, but more or less the view that in psychedelic therapy, at least the way psychedelic therapy is currently being practiced, music plays a very significant role. And to such a degree that I would say that psychedelic therapy can be conceptualized as a form of music therapy, but a drug-assisted or a drug-enhanced form of music therapy. And with that realization that music, the use of music in psychedelic therapy is not merely a science, it's also really an art that demands practice and insight and knowledge. Together with the realization that psychedelic therapy is scaling up and becoming really a global phenomena at this moment, can we expect all psychedelic therapists to have a 4-year education or longer in music therapy? Maybe not. And then how can we support psychedelic therapists and patients in getting the music that they need? So this was really the starting point of the company that I founded a year ago called WavePaths, where we aim to support therapists and patients in their music and make it more easy, more intuitive, to select the right music for their patients. Yeah,
awesome. We at Chacruna Institute, we also feel that it's it's kind of amazing how, if music is this common thread between all contexts and almost universal, how little there is about music out there and how much we still have to go. And just this idea of like when you study things and you isolate variables and you create placebo and double blind and artificial conditions and you kind of isolate all the elements and try to do like scientific objective observation of things, but you don't take into account the music element on all of this. So that's kind of curious because the therapist won't know what he's giving, the patient doesn't know what he's getting, and we are trying to see what is really the experience. But of course, the music will influence a lot all of that. So we also try to create this psychedelic therapy music forum to create a culture around music and understanding the role of music, understanding the commonalities between shamanic or therapeutic or research settings, and just to foster this education, because as you say, it's something that people do informally, like one will borrow playlists from the other and get tips here and there, but there's not a lot of like references where to pick those ideas and how to learn how to be better, and theories about all of this. It's very, the field is very in its beginning. So can you tell us more about what WavePaths is doing? Is it based in the UK?
Yeah, WavePaths is based in the UK, and we study how to facilitate what you could call transformative experiences with music and other immersive media. We also look at light art, for example, and then we make these experiences available through mobile technologies, mobile tools, and a new category of urban spaces. So we just opened our first space in London 2 months ago, and you want to look in the camera, right? 2 months ago, and that was quite exciting. We worked very hard to make that happen. We brought together architects, designers, light artists, musicians, to develop what we call an adaptive generative environment. So it's adaptive in the sense that the environment adapts itself to the individual through a computational system. And it's an environment. It generates music, it generates light, with the main purpose to facilitate a process of personal development, or a climate in which growth is most likely to happen. And we combine it with 4 research projects. So all participants are invited to participate in a survey research project. We look at how this new approach to well-being, can facilitate improvements in well-being, also on the long term. We do that with a study where we have a wait list that we compare with people who received the treatment acutely. We also look at light art itself, working together with an artist called Brian Eno, and we do an MRI study on top of it, where we look at the different categories of music that we identified from psychedelic therapy research and how that is being processed in the brain.
So from what I gather, WavePaths is a business, but it's also a kind of research institute. Are you like an academic going entrepreneur, or are you an entrepreneur that just was on academia before? How is that combination?
I never thought of myself as an entrepreneur, but I guess I had an idea that I became so, you could say, obsessed with, that I just spent night after night working on it. And at some point I said to myself, I gave myself a challenge basically. And the challenge was, would I forgive myself if I don't try to at least realize this concept, this project? And the answer was a clear no. So I decided to pivot away from academia, although my path there was quite going in a good direction. So yes, we are for profit because we have a global ambition and we want to scale this up relatively quickly over the coming years. At the same time, we are placing a very strong emphasis on scientific research. So we combine research that we publish open source with the development of our approach. That's correct. And I'm quite happy that we're still doing research, that I'm not losing that aspect completely.
And do you feel that there might be some conflict of interest in combining the more like commercial aspect with the scientific research?
There could be. I mean, there's always that likelihood of a conflict of interest, but I would say that that's always the case when you are passionate about a topic itself. I think that's the case for a lot of psychedelic researchers, for example, and the way to mitigate that is by designing good experiments that are waterproof. double-blind, placebo-controlled, ideally in partnerships with people that do the analysis for you, so we don't do the analysis ourselves, for example. There's a lot of things that you could do to design the experiment as such that it is waterproof enough to bypass and avoid these biases to creep in. Yeah.
Okay, and here's my last question for you. How important do you feel it is that you take psychedelics and listen to music yourself to be an expert talking about all of this and traveling the world and coming all the way from the UK to San Francisco in the base of this hub, high-techy, super contemporary, scenario that we're on and presenting on this? Do you have experience? Do you like to take it, or?
I mean, my whole interest came from a personal experience when I was 19 years old. That was very, very meaningful. And that made me want to do something with psychedelic therapy, and I wasn't really sure at that moment what. Eventually I did a neuroscience degree, and led me to where I am right now. I do believe if you are working with patients, it's absolutely essential to have experiences with psychedelics. Otherwise, it's literally impossible to empathize and understand what's going on in the mind of the individual. And I would even go so far that although I have a lot of respect for MAPS, for example, who got approval from the FDA to give MDMA right to their therapists in training, which is amazing. I would even argue that itself is probably not really sufficient to, as a therapist, have sufficient insight in what the patient is undergoing.
You mean one session only?
One session only, yeah.
And that's optional?
And that's even optional, right? That's true. That's a good point. I mean, the richness of the experience, the diversity, the unpredictability, in order to really feel grounded in that as a therapist, you need to have sufficient amount of experiences. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I come from a different discipline. So in anthropology, we really value field work and first-hand experience. And I actually feel it's kind of a fraud to talk about things that you never tried and that you have never had first-hand experience. So it's a kind of really different paradigm. On the one side, you would have people that say if they try this, they're going to be biased and they're going to be influenced and that they're going to lose their scientific objectivity. And us will say, well, if you don't have first-hand experiences or have some field work kind of experience, how can you be talking about this? So, and you have a place of speech. That's where you speak from. It's from your own experience, and you have to kind of disclose that. So I want to thank you very much, and just invite you. Do you want to say anything else about if people want to support you or get in touch with you or your work or about this conference or anything?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you can go to our website, wavepads.net. You can sign up to our newsletter. There's a lot of information on the website as well. Apart from that, I think that's it. You can find my academic publication Google Scholar if you want to read some of my papers. And looking forward to it next time. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you very much. Keep on tuned. Awaken Futures Summit, San Francisco. Big hug and to be continued.